Hello and welcome to my review of Resurrection, Season 2, Episode 2. And we're left with questions from the last episode. We found Sheriff Fred, sad and drunk, fighting Agent Bellamy in the street. Then later we found him sticking a gun in his mouth and was stopped at the last minute by his mother. Did he go to rehab? Did he let his mother back in his life? We saw Margaret digging up bones at her factory. Was she responsible for something really horrible? Carl was mentioned several times to be disheveled and looking terrible. Will we find out why? If you're finding me for the first time, I'm doing weekly reviews of Resurrection as well as Flash, Arrow, and The Walking Dead, so please click below to subscribe. The episode opens with a beautiful shot of Pastor Tom baptizing the returned, which quickly turns ugly as they stumble upon remains in the river. We instantly knew that these had to be the bones we saw at the conclusion of Resurrection Episode 2. And that was all but confirmed when Fred went to the factory and found what appeared to be a finger. So Maggie was called in to examine the bones, and we realized that there were 6 bodies, but only 2 victims, which means that there were multiples of 3 for each. Yeah, I get my math right. So she figured that these bodies were also over 80 years old. Apparently the 2 victims were murdered over and over again when they returned. And we get somewhat of an explanation when Maggie goes back to her clinic to examine the bones again, and we find Margaret, who's there for some sort of physical. We realize that either Margaret had killed or at least played a big part in the death of these people. Last episode, she dug up the bones, and we presumably thought she threw them in the river, but why? And she tells Maggie that the returned are not saints, and they don't deserve a second chance at life. Certainly sounds like she's admitting to something. Sheriff Fred, while standing on a bridge over the river, looking over where they possibly could have dumped the bodies, notices a piece of fabric stuck to a nail. He instantly knows that this fabric is from his family's factory and rushes to the exact room where the larger piece of fabric belongs and where his mother dug up the skeletons. Now, just 1 or 2 episodes before, he had stuck a gun in his mouth and was drunk on the street, and now he's Sherlock Holmes. Either that, or he was there or had something to do with the murders and it triggered some sort of memory. That would explain a lot, because that explain why he's so distrustful of his mother and the returned, because he was there as a child and somehow had to do and saw how bad the returned were. Perhaps he had something to do with the murders of those 2 people. Meanwhile, Agent Bellamy is searching for answers and has led him to his previous body. And he strikes a deal with the government to turn over the old bones for exchange for a look at his old body. For the last few episodes, there's a woman who is part of this mysterious government agency that Bellamy is now working for, and we never find her name. She does call Bellamy, and on his caller ID it says "government bitch." Another amusing portion was when Jacob decides to go to school and his parents bring him there, and they meet the teacher, and the teacher just assumes that the parents are the grandparents, and the look on their faces were aghast. We find out why Carl is so disheveled. He comes home and finds his ugly brother, who is sitting on the couch drinking beer and belching. And after a torrent of physical and mental abuse, and his brother admitting that he had killed the parents, he decides he kills his brother. And so he drags the body downstairs and starts to bury him. And just as he finishes, another copy of his brother opens the door and starts, "Carol, make me some food!" Do you agree with my assessment? Did I miss anything? Please let me know in the comments, and tune in next week for the next episode, and please subscribe.